Okay, so today in class we started our new class novel, Clementine for Christmas. It was written by Daphne Benedis Grab, and you can see on the cover there's a cute little bulldog. It starts on page 1, chapter 1, and it actually takes place on Wednesday, November 30th. Slow down, Josie's social studies teacher called as the entire class raced for the door. The final bell had just rung, and everyone was ready to leave the steamy classroom in Frost Ridge Middle School. As the kids pushed through the door and out into the crowded hallway, Josie waited quietly at the back. She had somewhere else to be too, but she'd rather wait a few minutes than risk getting trampled. But just then, Oscar Madison shoved past her, with Dev Gupta right behind him, his elbow smacking Josie's nose. She rubbed her face as the boys flew out of the room, not even noticing. Students were still streaming down the hallway when Josie finally made it out of the classroom. People were clustered in groups or in pairs, talking and laughing together. Josie stayed to the side of the hall and made her way to the 6th grade locker alcove. She packed up her stuff, put on her big blue down jacket, and headed for the exit. There was a slight spring in her step by the time she finally pushed through the heavy metal doors of the school and out into the biting cold of the late November afternoon. "I love your coat," Aisha King called right behind Josie. Josie turned automatically, but of course Aisha wasn't talking to her. Josie wasn't exactly setting the fashion scene on fire with her puffy coat. Aisha had been talking to Gabby Chavez, a Frost Ridge fashion icon with her sleek, glittery outfits that all the girls tried to imitate. Gabby was also smart and beautiful with glowing bronze skin and silky black curls. But Josie thought the true key to Gabby's popularity was the way she smiled at a person like she'd never met anyone more fascinating in her life.
Why was this back there?
Gabby had once beamed at Josie like that. When Josie had picked up a pen Gabby had dropped, and that grin had lit up Josie's whole day. Whatever it was, Gabby was a 6th grade celebrity, always surrounded by a group of adoring admirers, pretty much the opposite of Josie. But that was okay. Josie wasn't into crowds anyway. She shrugged it off and headed down the ice-crusted sidewalk, snowflakes landing softly on her cheeks as she walked. Frost Ridge was a small town tucked into the side of a gently sloping mountain. The west side of town overlooked the valley below, and the east side viewed the peaks of more impressive neighboring mountains. It didn't take long to walk from the school to Main Street, where stores and restaurants lined the wide sidewalk leading up to the big town square. Josie inhaled deeply as she passed Snickerdoodles. The bakery always smelled like a delicious combination of chocolate, cinnamon, and fresh-baked bread. Josie debated stopping in for one of their signature treats, a rich butter cookie coated with sugar and cinnamon. But she was already running late. Josie was eager to get to Frost Ridge County Hospital, where she volunteered almost every day, performing short skits and songs for the sick kids staying in the pediatric ward. But she had one stop to make on her way. She turned off Main Street onto Dandelion Drive. All the streets in town except Main Street were named after flowers, which was kind of funny for a town in the mountains of northern New York, where gardens bloomed less than 2 months of the year. Josie walked up the path to the small gray and burgundy house that she and her mom had lived in with her grandparents for the past 5 years. The minute she opened the front door, she was tackled by an exuberant dog. "I missed you too, Clementine," Josie cooed, kneeling down so she could hug her beloved pet. Clementine was a bulldog with a tan coat, a creamy white belly, floppy ears, and a wet black nose. Clementine was so overcome at the reunion that she yipped and danced around for a moment before snuggling close and licking Josie on the chin. Josie scratched behind Clementine's ears and the way her dog loved, and Clementine wriggled with contentment. You'd think we kept her locked in a closet all day, Josie's grandfather said as he made his way into the entry hall, leaning heavily on his cane. I know you spoil her when I'm gone, Josie teased, standing up to give her grandfather a hug, too. It's really coming down out there, isn't it? Her grandfather asked, patting her back and then peering out the window to the next to the front door. The snow was falling thick and fast. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to stop, Josie said. Make sure you wear a hat, Josie's grandmother said as she walked into the hallway. Grandma, that's cheating, Josie cried, pointing at her grandmother. She was wearing a red sweater with candy canes dancing across the front. Every year, her grandmother knit everyone in the family matching Christmas sweaters. By now, they had quite a collection that they wore all through the holiday season. The candy canes were from 2 years earlier. But the family rule was that they had to wait until December 1st for any of their Christmas sweaters, as well as their vast collection of Christmas Carol CDs and decorations to come out of storage. Her grandmother smoothed back a wisp of her hair that had just fallen out of her bun and smiled at Josie. I just couldn't wait, she admitted. Josie had to laugh at that. Her grandparents were like giddy little kids in the weeks leading up to Christmas, which was one of the many things Josie loved about living with them. Her grandparents had come from Vietnam to America when they were young to flee from the war. Josie believed they were probably the happiest people she knew, appreciating everything about their lives in America. And that was never truer than at Christmas time. Okay, I guess it's close enough, Josie said. And don't worry, I have a hat, Grandma. She held up her bright green cap with ear flaps that had been in her Christmas stocking last year. Her grandmother seemed to spend most of the year knitting gifts for Christmas. I just need to get Clementine's stuff. Josie set her backpack on the floor next to the dresser that held the family's large collection of gloves, scarves, and hats, as well as Clementine's supplies. Josie fished a leash out of the top drawer and snapped it into Clementine's collar. Then she slipped a warm pink doggy coat over Clementine's round middle. Ready, girl? She asked. Clementine barked in agreement. She always seemed to understand Josie perfectly. I'm making chicken curry for dinner tonight, her grandmother said. The one with lemongrass and sweet potatoes. Her grandmother's yummy dinners were another one of the things Josie loved about living with them. And she knew the help from her grandparents made it much easier for her mom to work her full-time job at the post office. I won't be late for that, Josie promised. Clementine bobbed next to her, eager to get going. You two have a good time, her grandfather said, holding open the door. Thanks, Grandpa, Josie said, as she and Clementine headed out into the wintry afternoon. All right, so we'll pick up with page 7 tomorrow.